Third annual Women in Law event currently underway, seeking to advance progressive dialogue in the interest of women in that profession. Advocate Ngcukaitobi, we understand, is a keynote speaker at that event.
Because when I was younger, I knew more than the people that were more experienced than me. So I perfectly understand when most of this is going to be ignored. When I forced myself into the recruitment committee at Bowman Gilfillan, which at the time was a probably 95% white firm. And when I was appointed as a partner, I think there were only two other black partners, and I was the third. The numbers have grown now. Things are slightly better than they were, although they are not desirable. And we forced ourselves to go into the recruitment committee because there was only one black person in the recruitment committee who was in the commercial department, and I was in the labor department. The one thing I noticed was that the recruitment committee tended to recruit people that looked like them, that sounded like them, and that had the same social background as them. They also tended to go to the same places that they went to when they were young. They went to St. John's, they went to Michael House, they went to Bishop's, they went to UCT, they went to Wits, they went to Stellenbosch. What they didn't do, they didn't go to my university, which was the University of Transkei. Nor did they go to the University of the North, Tefloop, or go to the University of Fort Hare. They knew no one there. And when we asked them, why is it that the recruitment team never visits these universities? The constant refrain was, we have no connections with these institutions. That, of course, was a mask for a larger structural problem. Nevertheless, we forced ourselves into the committee. And the first thing we did was we must go to places that we have never been before. Because unless you go to the places you've never been before, you get new experiences. Transformation is a pretty meaningless thing. It is easy to say other people must transform, which is what we usually say when we talk transformation. But very difficult to say we must transform first before demanding transformation from other people. So I realized that as soon as we were able to break the stranglehold of the big universities and the big private schools, our perspectives changed. We were able to see the other half, how they live like, what their aesthetics are like, what their desires are, and what their dreams are. And suddenly, they were different from the dreams of the people that had hitherto conducted the process of recruitment. But still, even in that recruitment committee, when individual candidates came to be interviewed, there was still a difference in what we were looking for. We still could not agree about what we were looking for. And it was odd because we were trying to recruit for the same firm. We're trying to build the same institution. But we still cannot agree about what are the attributes and the characteristics of a candidate that we are looking for to build this institution. Now that, again, is a product of history. It's because of the perspectives from which we come into the job. So I tended myself to look for people with social conscience. I wanted to know what have they done for their communities, or what have they done at university for others. And I realized that some of my colleagues tended to try and look for people with certain achievements in certain disciplines. Did you get the prize for the law of Dillard? Did you get the prize for the law of contract? Which is not to say that those questions should not be asked. But the question is, if you are trying to build a truly South African institution, is it better that a candidate received 72% in the law of Dillard or got 65% in Dillard, but has taken 20 other people out of poverty in the process? But I also tended to look for people that finished things that they had started. You know, there is nothing worse than incomplete tasks. And it doesn't matter what the tasks were in size or importance. I wanted to know that they can start something from the beginning and see it to the end. So some of them would have started organizations, but the organizations would vanish within a couple of months. And it used to concern me that the children we were raising did not have the resilience to see things to the end. So I tried to make sure that the candidates I was looking for and that would work with me were people that began things and ended them. And that's because cases are like that. You know, cases are things that start and end. The last thing you want is somebody who drops out in the middle. And cases also have emotions. You know, a case has an emotion. They've got highs, they've got lows. There's a time when you like a witness. There's a time when you hate a witness. There's a time when you like a judge, and the next moment you hate the judge. So a case, in a sense, is a representation of life, right? So when I looked for candidates at the time, I wanted to know if I am with you in a case which can be regarded as a battle, you will be there until the end. You'll be there until the end. Now, that is not about whether or not you speak English through your nose or whether or not you speak English like a Xhosa man or not. But it has everything to do with something inside of you, the character. So I wanted to see that the people had character. I also wanted to see that when things went wrong, they did not give up. You see, there were many excuses in my own life to give up. The child next door has just received a present from their father who works in Johannesburg. But I know that I will not receive it because not only does my father not work in Johannesburg, he doesn't exist at all because he's dead. So, but that you could make a choice there about whether to give up simply because something you expected was not delivered, or whether you persisted in the face of adversity. So I wanted to see that the candidates I was dealing with were not people that gave up when the going got tough. That, in a sense, you can say is another aspect of character. But I want to see that someone doesn't give up when things go wrong. But also I wanted to make sure that they were impatient with the status quo. They did not think that South Africa was a normal place. They knew that South Africa is an abnormal place. The fact that there were so many white men in the same room is not a normal thing. It is an abnormal thing. the fact that everyone who works in the delivery room is a black man. Everyone who works in the kitchen is a black man. Oh, yes, there were also men and women, I accept that fully. But correct. And everyone who was in the commercial department was a white man. And everyone who was in tax, in competition, were white men. So that impatience with the status quo was a positive attribute for me. But it also led us into significant disagreements. I remember we had a candidate from the University of the Western Cape, for me, who had an impressive resume, because they had been a member of SASCO. They had led many student protests and strikes. They had taken students out of class. They had disrupted some classes, all of which I thought was very impressive, until one of my colleagues reminded me, this one sounds like a troublemaker. But I thought that if you were able to finish your LLB in 4 years, notwithstanding all of this other activity, that for me was an impressive attribute. But I classified it as impatience with the status quo. It was the belief that things did not have to be the way they are. These are things we've inherited from the past, but these are things that the past has given us to change, right? Most of you remember the writer of the book, The Wretched of the Earth. Do you know who it is? It's Frantz Fanon, who reminds us that every generation has a mission, and the task of the generation is either to fulfill that mission or to betray it. But I wanted people to ask themselves that question: are we going to betray our mission, or are we going to fulfill it? But I wanted them not to accept the status quo. I wanted them also to know that they were not an island. In other words, they did not have to do this by themselves, that they had to work in a community, and that when they succeeded, they must know that the success does not belong to them, but it belongs to everyone. So I try to dismantle the individualism by asking these questions that show that there is commitment to a wider social and community cause. And again, I realized that sometimes we were not ad idem about whether or not the success is a community success or is an individual success. But my own view was that if you succeeded, you had a duty to open the doors for the others, and you had a duty to share your own success with the others. So why I thought this was important for me personally was that my brother was the first to finish college. It was at the time a teacher training college, and he became a teacher of physical science and mathematics. I was hopeless in both subjects. But I was in my second year of university, and I could not have gone to the third year without financial support from him. And when I finished my own university, my sister was now ready to enter university. She too could not start unless I paid. I know that a lot of you think this is black tax. but I see it as part of and parcel of this integration of the individual and society. But I also wanted my candidates to know that there was no one waiting to save them. There was no one waiting to save them. That they had to help themselves. They had to stand up on their own feet, and they had to face the world every day. And that if they waited for other people to save them, that was usually a red flag. I didn't want them to blame others, to say that the reason I am where I am is because who advocates Moroka has not included me in that brief. I wanted them to know that they have the one brief they have today, and it may be a small brief in the magistrate's court, but they must do it because there is a client waiting. And they must not wait for the next brief that they do not have, because their success will depend on their performance today. It will not depend on a non-existent, hypothetical future case. So, these have been my own experiences, and these have been the things I've tried to look for in order to decide whether or not a person is likely to be a success or is likely not to be a success. This may be wrong, but I think that there is something we can learn from all of these ourselves. And there's something we can take individually. You can take them all, you can take one, or you can take 0 of them. These, of course, are not in ignorance of the fact that we are engaged in a battle against the system. We must always accept that. But nevertheless, tomorrow you wake up as an individual, and there is work to be done. And you are not going to wait until you dismantle the system before you do the work that is in front of you. Thank you, Karabo.